Smalls. I suppose you don't even know who the babe is either. It's plugged. What? Chewing tobacco?
Tobacco, man.
What do you do with it? You're killing me, Smalls.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and right here on the channel, I reviewed with Comics by Perch. We reviewed Amazing Spider-Man 850. I personally thought it was a really fun issue. I enjoyed it a lot. It wasn't great or anything, but it was good. And it turns out it's the swan song for Ryan Ottley on Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't really see this coming. We knew that Patrick Gleason was going to be illustrating, like, I think the next 3 issues, and Mark Bagley was going to be doing some Amazing Spider-Man work. Did not realize Ryan Ottley would be leaving the series. And here with me to talk about that. Now, people know you, Doc, as the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado. They don't realize you're also a big Spidey mark as well.
Oh yeah. I love Spider-Man. It's actually, I've been reading Spider-Man almost as long, like within 1 month, as X-Men.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about Ryan Ottley's work on Spider-Man, maybe where he's going in the future. But this was the tweet. Actually, the first tweet was, "I'm off of Spider-Man," and then he gave some clarification, and he said, "My last Spider-Man issue is ASM 850. Hope you like it. Thanks to the ASM team," and he gave some shout outs to Nick Spencer and the editorial team. And then he says, "I will be back at Marvel soon with a new project I'm very excited about. Currently doing pre-production." So Ryan Ottley is off Amazing Spider-Man 850 now, or off of Amazing Spider-Man after issue 850, also known as issue number 49, The Return of Green Goblin. Like I said, I reviewed it here on the channel. I enjoyed it. I think you enjoyed it as well.
I did.
Before we get into what all this means, I do want to say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this, give us a thumbs down if you don't. Now, Doc, just real quick, what were your thoughts on ASM 850 before we kind of get into this Ryan Ottley news?
It was really fun. It wasn't as big of a deal as, an 850 issue anniversary should be. But it was a good story. It was just kind of a regular Spider-Man issue, but like quadruple length. I really liked it. Didn't really like the backup stories. I thought they were kind of dumb. I think I read 1 page of each of them, and I was like, no, not interested. But yeah, the main story was fun. It was a great kind of, I think you put it best. It's a good, fun popcorn comic.
Yep. So I enjoyed that. I'm sad to see him go, but this is one of the weird things we've got here on the left are the pencils from Ryan Ottley for this. I believe this was in Amazing Spider-Man 12. On the right is the finished art. And it's weird how it never seemed to translate. Obviously his art was amazing on Invincible, and we're going to talk about that here a little bit later in the video, the new Invincible series on Amazon. But his art, like, you look at that's extremely dynamic on the left. Over here on the right, that's good Spider-Man art. But I don't feel like Marvel really took these pencils and used them to their fullest. You know what I'm saying?
I tend to agree with you on that. I think Ryan Ottley is a phenomenal artist. I loved his work on Invincible, and I think they muddied him down a little too much with some of their coloring and inking. He can do some super spectacular, just bombastic comic book art, and he had all that cool, like, texturing into the background. They just slapped black over it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it seemed to be an ongoing problem since the day he arrived on Amazing Spider-Man, even really until the day he left. And he's a good Spider-Man artist. I don't think he'll go down as like one of the definitive Spider-Man artists, but I don't really think it was completely his fault. I think Marvel, they just never got him the right inker, maybe the right colorist, and it just didn't translate as well as it should have.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, in my opinion, it could have been so much better. Reading Invincible back in the day, always felt like, God, I'd love to see this guy on Spider-Man. And then I finally got to, and I'm like, God, Marvel screwed it up by darkening it up too much and not making it as, four color as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
His art, his finished pencils look more finished in my opinion and more vibrant and energetic than the finished product, and that's kind of disappointing. And I do kind of put that on. I would say I put it on Marvel. I'm not certain who chose the inkers or colors on here. Maybe Ottley chose his own. I don't know, but I didn't like the way it translated.
Yeah, it's weird. If you follow his Twitter account, he'd always be releasing, finished pages of unfinished artwork. Like, oh man, that's gonna be dope. Like, look at this, and then when you'd say it, it still looks cool. You're like, yeah, they just. You're right. They muddied it down. They made it too dark.
Yeah, it's like everybody came from the David Goyer school of comic books, where everything needs to be wearing all black at night without the lights on while it's raining.
Yeah. So really appreciate his work. I think Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run's been better than anyone could have anticipated. It's not classic in my opinion, but
no,
it's certainly worth a read, and there's no reason really.
Yeah, it's been a solid run so far, and I am disappointed to see Ryan Ottley leave. I think that kind of rotation that they had with him and Ramos and sometimes Chris Bacalo, sometimes now granted Chris Bacalo is going to be busy on that, what is it, nonstop Spider-Man that with Joe Casey soon. And then occasionally Bagley more recently. But I would have really liked to see the way that Ottley and Gleason and Ramos were kind of a team on that book. And I never really got it because, Gleason didn't do much yet. And
it sounds like Gleason essentially is taking over for Ottley at this. And I'm excited for it. Gleason obviously did some amazing work on Superman. I think his line art transitions perfectly to Spider-Man. He's already worked with the character a bit, and I'm excited for that.
I am too.
In the tweet, Ottley did mention a new project. I was kind of going over, like, what could he be working on? Obviously it's not going to be Iron Man. That just had a reboot. Fantastic Four, they just announced R.B. Silva is the full-time artist on that, so that there's another project that I would love to see him on, that apparently it's not going to be Ryan Ottley. So I was kind of having a hard time, figuring it out. But these are the three characters I thought maybe would be cool. Captain Marvel, I think, is on issue 22, is prime for a reboot. And about this point, the sales should have dropped quite enough. They need something to generate interest in the character. I think Ryan Ottley, not the biggest name, but is a big enough name to drive interest. It would, be a huge improvement on the art, in my opinion. Punisher, we don't really have a Punisher comic right now. Haven't really seen Ottley go that dark, but he did some pretty crazy stuff in Invincible, and I think that he could definitely do some gritty artwork. And then Blade's another character. I think him doing like vampire ninja action would be pretty cool too. What do you think?
I think that now, and this is me not to really typecast Ryan Ottley, but I think if Ryan took his style from Invincible and applied it to Captain Marvel, it would probably be the thing that actually made people really actually go and like grab on to Carol as Captain Marvel. That should be a total 4-color comic book in that Superman, Invincible, Wonder Woman kind of style, and Ottley would be perfect for that. But I don't think I'd really like to see him do the Punisher, just because Ottley does flying and big superhero stuff so well, and keeping him trapped on the ground would be terribly disappointing. And kind of the same thing with Blade. But the one thing that I would be actually kind of down for is, I know we're not going to get it because, they're still doing Immortal Hulk, but seeing Ottley on a Hulk book would be amazing. It would be kind of like, it would kind of remind me of when you had like Ed McGuinness doing Hulk.
I thought about that one too, but they just announced that the Immortal Hulk's going to end at issue 50, and they were just going to continue with one shots on that one. So there just really isn't a lot of characters out there, but I agree with you. Captain Marvel is the one that makes the most sense because she is flying, and it fits his style. But if they want to go do something different, there's a couple of other darker characters, darker heroes for him to play with potentially. Now that is not all the Ottley news. We just got the very first trailer of Amazon's Invincible. Obviously, Invincible was Ryan Ottley on the art, and it was
Robert Kirkman.
Robert Kirkman was the writer, obviously, of Walking Dead fame. He's obviously also done a lot of work at Marvel as well. Before that, he's basically, he's an IP farm over there at Skybound. He's always got a new project out right now. I think it's Firepower. He's got Die, 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 and Oblivion Song all going now. But we got the first animated version of Invincible. The teaser was cool, man.
It does. It looks so cool. I am definitely in on this. They didn't tone it down at all because Invincible's kind of always been this interesting thing where it's very Superman, Spider-Man-esque, but it is phenomenally brutal.
Very brutal. That's why I was like Punisher, maybe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's phenomenally brutal. It's brutal on like the level of like the Authority in or the Ultimates, but it doesn't have that dark Brian Hitch, realism to it. So seeing that kind of juxtaposition between the very comic book cartoonish style of Ottley and bright four colors, and then the brutality of Invincible was always really cool, and they did not skimp on this at all.
Yeah, here's a promo that Image did for Invincible back in the day, the best superhero comic in the universe, and you can see right there in some of the images, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
I mean, it's blood and guts but in a ostensibly Superman, Spider-Man-esque style, very bright comic book. And that was the thing that I always loved about Invincible, how bright it was. It wasn't Batman. It wasn't everything at night in the dark. And they're not skimping on that. Because you know what? That tagline on that, the best superhero comic in the universe, it was in probably the past 20 years, Invincible is the best superhero comic that's been released, in my opinion.
I know you just recently went back and read all of it. How many issues was it again? It
was 144 issues of the main series, but there was also there was a couple of tie-ins, like spin-off miniseries. I think there was an Adam Eve miniseries. There was a couple of specials, stuff like that. But it was about 100.
So people want to go back and get ready for the cartoon on Amazon. You're not going to be able to read it in a week. It's going to take you a little while.
No, it's going to take you a little while. But you know what? Once you get into it, you just start banging out the trades, and you're like, "Holy crap! I just went through 6 trade paperbacks this weekend reading Invincible."
Yeah, it's Image. So they're normally 4 issues a trade, correct?
Most of them are actually. I read them all in the hardcover.
Oh, you had the omnibus, didn't you?
No, I didn't do the omnibus, but I did the Ultimate Invincible. They broke them up into, I think, 12 issues, 12 to 14 issues. So they weren't omnibus size, but they were still the oversized hardcovers. And I love the way. First of all, I love the way they look on the bookshelf. But secondly, they read very well. It's serialized, but you do need to start from the beginning to really understand what's going on. You can't really jump around, but it's an addictive read. It really is.
I'll be honest, with all the live action adaptations, which I haven't been a big fan of, especially the Netflix model, where essentially it's an 8 to 10 episode, 1 hour each each issue or episode's like season, and it's
Yeah.
really just like a really drawn out movie. It's
Correct.
like really long. I don't really like those, but I think a lot of these characters in these stories would be much better suited to animated adaptations, and so hopefully this does very well, and we'll get more of that because there is the trend. Everything's going live action, but I think it's time to go back because I think you'll be able to adapt it better, and you'll be able to tell the stories, more compactly.
Also,
animated.
yeah, because you don't have to worry about that live action budget. You don't have to worry about building sets. It's just drawing stuff on animation cells. You got a budget, but your budget doesn't really drastically increase from episode to episode.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what happens in that episode. Your budget's going to be about the same. So, well, yeah, cartoons are expensive, and hopefully, and I don't know whether or not they're going to try to, because back in the day, in the 80s, they would always try to support their cartoons with, a line of action figures or stuff. I think that this would be a great opportunity for Amazon to get into the action figure game. Have some Amazon exclusive Invincible figures.
Well, Todd McFarlane probably knows Robert Kirkman pretty well.
I would say so. I think that there were already Invincible figures, but I'm not sure.
I bet they weren't made for kids. They were probably made for adults.
Oh, more than likely. But this show is not going to be made for kids either. This is definitely teenagers plus. And I think, unlike a lot of the other teen plus cartoons that have been released in the past few decades, I feel like that this is actually giving us what we want instead of just a bunch of weird shit. This is going to I have a feeling this is going to remind me of like the HBO Spawn cartoon more than the
MTV Spawn.
Yeah, more than more than like, or MTV Max. Or more than like a lot of like the Adult Swim Cartoon Network stuff. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a lot more brutal, but it's giving us exactly what we want. It's not just like weird shit like Aqua Teen Hunger Force or crap like that. Yeah, I never understood those kind of cartoons.
Hopefully this hits big. Like I said, I'd rather see a lot of the comic book stuff get adapted in animation or anime itself. I think it's a better format for it. Plus, I don't really like the big drawn out, like really, really slow burn stories personally. But that's the news, Doc. Ryan Ottley is off. Amazing Spider-Man at issue 850. Looks like Patrick Gleason is kind of taking over it. We know Bagley is going to be working there as well. I'm not sure what's the deal with Ramos currently. He is working on another project. It's in pre-production. We don't know. We had a few guesses on what maybe he would be working on, but Ryan Ottley's Invincible, obviously in conjunction with Robert Kirkman, probably was the bigger name selling this, will be a cartoon on Amazon in the near future. We got a trailer out. We're excited for it, and I think that'll do it for today, Doc. You got anything else to say?
No, go back and read Invincible if you haven't yet. Seriously, it's well worth it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all very much, and we will see you later.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.